50th City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
Thailand, Cambodia, Laos and Myanmar, Jeff Deutsch. You may remember His Excellency spoke to us back in January this year. Seems like only yesterday, but January this year on the 100th anniversary of Nelson Mandela's birthday. And I know and believe he enjoyed the experience in our club so much that he did agree to return at a later date. And that day, of course, is today. I'm pleased and delighted, therefore, to introduce His Excellency, who will speak to us this morning on the topic of discovering South Africa. And in the parley of Australians, I'm told also he's a good bloke. So please welcome the Ambassador to Thailand.
Thank you for those kind words and for welcoming me. And Carol's not here today, and I apologize for that. We've got a son getting married on the 1st of December, and Carol's back home making sure that everything's going in the right direction. But I'm supported by Councillor van Staten and his wonderful family, so I'm not alone, and I've got some more reinforcements. Good Art, good Jeff, and good U have come with me to make sure that in the absence of Carol, I'm on course. So I'm here and I'm in one piece. But good to be with you all this morning. Thank you very much for the warm welcome. And for those of you that were able to spend a few minutes with me before breakfast, thank you for coming to say hi and asking how I'm doing. Well, I'm still on my 2 feet and I'm back here, and it's good to be back here in the same year and the high note that we started on at the beginning of this year. You have no idea. I thought diplomats are diplomats, they do what diplomats do. It seems that the year of 2018, which is the centenary, is probably going to be the highlight of my own political and diplomatic career. I have never made so many speeches about Mandela ever in my life. I've been on every single program all over. I've even been to the Netherlands. I gave 4 lectures in the Netherlands. And of course, I've also been to South Africa several times this year. One of them was purely to speak about the legacy of Nelson Mandela, his values, and what it means. Let me just turn this a little bit. What the values actually mean to young students. And the amazing audience I had this year was, as you know, in the Netherlands, the academic year starts later in the year compared to us in the Southern Hemisphere. And I went to speak to students who were on their second day at campus. It was an amazing audience, and I was very happy to see so many African faces at the Standard University in Leeuwarden. Very rewarding experience, and to share with them these amazing values that have literally changed my own life and my outlook on life, and what it could mean to them in their student lives. So yes, it's been an amazing year, but I owe you the credit because you started off by inviting me to the PCEC, and it started off on a very high note. So thank you very much for that. I will remain a friend until my posting ends. I'll be popping in to see you from time to time. And I'm very jealous because I believe next week you're having Australian wine tasting. As you know, they beat us by 1 position on the world ranking in terms of wine, which we'll talk about just now. But we follow soon after that, and we're not, the margins are very narrow, so watch it, we're coming. And now that you're hosting them, maybe you invite us to do a South African wine tasting next year, which we'd be honored to do. So thank you very much for this wonderful invitation to be back here. And we're here today to talk to you about amazing South Africa. And we thought that we'll leave all the seriousness out of it today. I didn't wear my bright Mandela shirt, as some of the fan club is rather disappointed. But next time I'll find one of the brighter ones to wear again. But not only are we celebrating the centenary of Nelson Mandela, we're also celebrating 25 years of excellent bilateral relations with Thailand. And that will be highlighted on the 6th of December when we have a get-together with the Thai government to celebrate these amazing relations. And not out of step with everybody else. You know that some embassies or countries have a 200-year relationship with Thailand, such as the US. I think Portugal goes a little bit bigger. I think it's 300 or 400 years. Well, South Africa is not out of the loop either. The first Thai envoy arrived in South Africa by sheer mistake in 1686. So that was the first time a Thai made contact. He was from the royal house of Ayutthaya, from the kingdom of Siam, and he was shipwrecked at Cape Agulhas, which I'll talk about a little bit later, because really Cape Agulhas is the southernmost tip of Africa, not Cape Town, unfortunately for them. But he was then housed by Governor Simon van der Stel, and later on, 3 months later, he was brought back to Thailand by a French envoy who had gone via the Cape to refuel, recharge, and get supplies on board, and then came back to Thailand. Of course, after the Bandung Conference of 1955, many Asian countries took a resolution not to pursue relationships with the apartheid government, and most of them suspended bilateral relations in 1956. And until 1993, we had no relations, meaning bilateral relations with Thailand. And after Mandela gave the go-ahead to the Asian countries in a conference held not far from here, Asian countries then went back and re-established bilateral relations. So we're celebrating those 25 years this year on the 6th of December. And we are happy to say that we've had a very good relationship with Thailand, and we will be talking about that on the 6th of December. But just to know that we are a very young relationship, if you compare all the other countries. Some of the African countries, like Kenya, has a 60-year relationship with Thailand. We are very new, but yes, I think we're punching reasonably above our weight, and that will show in a few years to come. We are Thailand's biggest trading partner on the African continent, and they are our biggest trading partner in ASEAN. So we are very happy that we hold those two positions, and very dear to our trade relations, and we have a very good relationship with the Thai government. And of course, this is very meaningful for us to come and share some ideas, some thoughts, and to market our country. So I'm being a bit of a salesman this morning to try and tempt you to come to South Africa and see this wonderful country that we've inherited, and that we'd like to keep as it is and pass on for many generations to come. So we'll start with the picture before you. This is a very interesting picture. This, because you were kind enough to host us earlier in the year. This is a monument of Mandela's arrest. He was arrested in 1962 in a little town called Howick, which is just north of Pietermaritzburg. He was on his way from his home in Kunu in Transkei, and he spent the night in Kokstad, which is my hometown, which is about 2.5 hours drive from Kokstad is Howick. And on his way onto what is now the N3, which is the main road to Johannesburg, he was arrested. In fact, the security police were trailing him from Transkei into Kokstad. They lost him in Kokstad, they couldn't find him, but a day or two later he was arrested in Howick. Now the amazing thing about Nelson Mandela is that he had this amazing memory for names. In 1996 or 7, I was called to his office, and as I said to you last time, he had this wonderful way of saying, can you do an old man a favor? And you say yes before you know what the favor is. And he said there was a family in Kokstad called the Goga family, an Indian family. And when I was in trouble and I was on the run, this family took me in and they hid me in the cellar. And the security police couldn't trace me. And he says, I want you to get a letter to this family and say thank you. That was another nightmare. We'll talk about it on another occasion. But after he had stayed with the Goga family and taken his leave, unfortunately, he was arrested in Howick, which is, as I said, 2.5 hours drive from Kokstad. So this keyring that we have outside, and please make sure you get one. We brought 4 different keyrings. This one might be the most popular. I'm sorry, we'll bring more of these. But on the next visit, we'll bring some more. But this is made from steel plates. It's a very unique artistic and engineering feature. from one angle you can't see that there's anything there, and then as you come more to the center of going past the monument, you then begin to see the picture of Nelson Mandela. So it's at the arrest site that he was arrested in 1962. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave you with that, and please do collect some earrings, and please do collect some of the brochures that we brought for you. Some of them are very beautifully done by the companies that have sponsored them and gone to a lot of trouble. Please feel free to take as many as you like and pass them around. So we'll speak to the presentation. I'm going to move away from doing a lecture to you this morning because I think I need to look at the screen as well as I speak to you. And thank you very much for the roving mic and the wonderful welcome that we had this morning from this amazing club. So I'm just going to find a place where I can stand. Of course, the good news from Alan is that Alan is meeting with some Cape Town artists this weekend that we are hoping will be able to come to Thailand to do performances here, because there's a particular culture in Cape Town that's not very well known, which is called the Cape Malay culture, which comes from people that are descendants from the Malay slaves that were in South Africa, and these are 5th and 6th generation Cape Malays as they were classified by the apartheid government. They've chosen to retain that, and they are easily identifiable, most of them, because they had the names or surnames of the ships or the month of the year that brought them to South Africa. And many of them are Januaries or have a surname of April or November, or some months are more popular than others. It just depends what the slave trade was like at that particular time in the year. And they have come with a very unique culture, which I'll speak to very shortly. So we'll come back to that particular aspect of our discussion. I would like to move to the next slide, please. Now, I often get asked, where is South Africa? I think the best way of actually describing it to you is we are 23 to 33 degrees south of the equator. Almost, I think, parallel to some of the Latin American countries that would have similar climates. So we are a lot cooler. We have very high altitudes that run along what is known as the, let me just get the tip, it's supposed to get this goodie to work for us. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the map is the Indian Ocean that we share with many Indian Ocean countries. And there's an organization that was started by Nelson Mandela called the East Indian Ocean Rim Association, which has just met in South Africa, near Durban. Where's Durban? Yeah, there we are, because Durban's on the Indian Ocean. And this was formed by Nelson Mandela with his counterpart, the Indian president at the time, to be able to talk about common issues of common interest, the blue economy, how do we preserve the blue economy for future generations, and how do we enhance trade on the countries on the Indian Ocean Rim. And of course, if you look at most of the Asia-Pacific countries have become observers to IORA, and it's a very important organization that we now chair, and we hosted in South Africa a month ago. So in the northern part, that's about 23 degrees, 0.5 latitude, and here at the bottom we have Cape Agulhas where the dock is. Now that is the southernmost tip of the African continent, in a straight line. Cape Town, as you can see, is west. This is has a very difficult climate. It's very windy. It's always a bit chilly. And we went there camping in December once. We nearly landed up in the Atlantic Ocean. It's very windy. So Cape Town is where, of course, technically speaking, this is where the oceans actually meet. But of course, it can't be true if those that claim that there's an Indian Ocean on Cape Town, one eastern side, and the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. So clearly there is a big argument between Cape Agulhas and Cape Town as to where the oceans actually meet. But yes, Cape Town has the benefit of both a cold water stream and a warm Mozambique stream. So also I often get asked about the populations, and I think this is important because you're not going to a country that's densely populated, that's where everything, you've got battle to get anywhere. Yes, we have traffic congestion in some of our cities at peak hour, but generally South Africa is very accessible. We have very good highways. We have an N1 that runs from Johannesburg all the way down past Bloemfontein. I think there's one of these lines, is it here somewhere? And then it runs down to Beaufort West. When you are here, you are 450 kilometers from Cape Town. It runs almost in a straight line like that. And you can do that from Pretoria, a very beautiful freeway, as we call them, or expressway, from Pretoria, Johannesburg, and straight down to Cape Town. A trip like that, non-stop, could take you the better part of 17, 18 hours, traveling at 100, 120 kilometers an hour. Beautiful roads. Oh, there's the N1. And of course, we have other roads that take us almost straight across the country. I think that's part of somewhere there's the N12. That's a bit problematic at the moment because it doesn't have the capacity for high volume traffic. Something's been done about that. But the idea is that you'll be able to have another expressway going from east to west. And that's planning is in that phase now. Also the N1 is one of the roads that comes along here. The N2 that takes you through the Transkei inland and then goes straight up to Johannesburg and Pretoria. But currently there is a road being built on the Wild Coast from Port Edward to East London. This coastline has never been marketed as a tourism destination. This is called the Wild Coast, partly because it's never really been populated. As you can see, there are no towns, there are no cities along that coastline. It's being preserved as the Wild Coast. And it's very rich in marine reserves. There are a lot of breeding grounds that are marine reserves along that coastline. It's very popular for whale breeding and different species of fish. Therefore, it hasn't really been in the spotlight for development, but there is a need for a road infrastructure here. And one of the longest and tallest bridges of Africa will have to be built here at junction 20, where it crosses the gorge to take the road further down east. So there'll be a connection between Durban and East London, one straight expressway, which is already under construction. So we're looking forward to seeing that infrastructure being realized, because many of you have probably driven, flown to Cape Town and then come up the Garden route. Some of you fly from George back to Johannesburg and then leave. Others have taken the road a little bit further and gone as far as East London, taken a flight and gone back to Johannesburg. You'll now be able to start the Garden route here, go through the Eastern Cape and up the Wild Coast to Durban and then take your flight. You can also fly direct from Durban as well as from Cape Town. Several flights, there's about 8 or 9 flights that go direct into Cape Town. Middle East Airlines, Kenya Airlines also goes to Cape Town. So that popularity is growing, so you don't have to stop over in Johannesburg anymore, you can fly direct to Cape Town. And of course from Durban, the Durban Emirates flights are always full. If you don't book in advance, you can be in trouble. So this is also a very popular destination in terms of where to go in South Africa. Getting back to the population, Cape Town has roughly 3.5 million people, and Durban is very similar, a couple of 100,000 difference here and there, about 3.5. Johannesburg 3.7. But of course you've got to take Johannesburg and surrounds. You've got to take Johannesburg, Soweto and Ekurhuleni, then you get 7.5 million population. Because these are 3 different cities literally. Soweto is still the biggest township in the southern hemisphere, and of course that has a population of 1.7. Pretoria has about 2.9 million people, and the demographics of our country, 79 are African as in black Africans, and then we have 10%, the other 10, sorry, these are percentages. The other 10% are whites or colors. I'm not sure which one of the two it is, because one census, there's a slight tipping of the scales one way or another. But either way, between colored and whites, the population is 10% and 9%. And then, of course, Asian, mainly Indian, or citizens of Indian descent are the other 2.5%. That's basically how the population is split up. And you will find that, you'll see later in our tourism figures, that we are not a mass-based tourism. We are high net worth tourism, that because we feel that this is where we can add value to the tourism that we want to get, and we're not overrun by low-cost tourism, which is something that does affect us when we start looking at the environment. And I will speak to some of the environmental issues and the successes that we've been able to achieve. That, of course, is Cape Town. This photograph is taken from Global Strand. This is a very cool part of Cape Town. The water is very cold. It goes down to about 16 degrees. And as you can see, this is just natural landscaping on the beach, which is preserved. And it's really well taken care of because of soil erosion, because of the wind. And as you can see, there's some little dormitories there, some beautiful flowers. But some bright politicians had an idea that they could do something across here, cut out all the traffic of going around. But the environmentalists didn't let them get away with that. And that's not going to happen because that would ruin this beautiful view that we have. In fact, there's a dispute about those 3 tall buildings. They're called the pepper pots. They were built long before my time of going into politics. And there's still a dispute about them, that they ruin the outline of the city and that they should be demolished. So the owners have had a very difficult time for the last 10, 15 years. But we've learned to live with it. We call them the pepper pots, and they're part of that scene that we now see. And we have been rated amongst the top destinations in the world in terms of tourism, which we're very proud of, and we have to work very hard to retain that particular title. Of course, we are really assisted, and one of the good things about some of the currency fluctuations that we've seen, it doesn't help us with our imports, but it certainly helps us with our exports, is the rand, dollar, euro, and exchange rate, and pound exchange rate. So if you are looking at using any of these currencies, let me just give you the outline as to how many rands you get for 1 pound. That's 18 rand you get for 1 pound, and you get 16 rand for 1 euro, and you get 14 rand for $1. We're not responsible for these numbers that get imposed on us by all sorts of other institutions, and we have to live with it. So it does affect us when it comes to our imports, but as I say, it does help us with our exports. And that beautiful mountain that you see there has now recently been nominated or voted the 7th natural wonder of the world. And as you can see, this is, the heading speaks for itself. What sets us apart, what makes us different. Before we leave that beautiful scene of Cape Town, I'll tell you a little more about the wine book that goes with it, and you can form your own conclusions as far as that's concerned. We also, of course, want to speak to you about this being our top destination in Southern Africa. South Africa has been the recipient of most international tourists. Of course, we did a lot of domestic tourism. Here I'm speaking about domestic as in the African continent. The numbers are astronomical. These are mainly trade or economic tourists, but it helps us with our economy. And of course, we do get a spin-off from that. We believe that we are unique in that we've never abandoned many of our cultures. As you can see on the right-hand side here, we have a Zulu. And if you watch the movie called Shaka Zulu, this is probably one of his proud descendants. And when you go into the northern part of KwaZulu-Natal, you will see tribal dancing and cultural villages that still replicate the old Zulu lifestyle. And these are a proud tourism marketing aspect of KwaZulu-Natal. And as you can see, there's a young South African here with his own unique style. And the youth are taking on a new way of presenting their culture, which is very colorful, very rich, and original. And here are the 2 towers in Johannesburg that have been converted into, that looks like either abseiling or something they're doing there, which is action sports. Of course, I wouldn't do that, but they've been artistically decorated. Before, there was a tendency to demolish these towers, but now we put them to better use. And safaris we'll talk about a little bit later, and these are the penguins at Boulders Beach, which you can get a chance to swim with if you're brave enough. If you get a nice rubber suit to protect you from the very cold water. And as you can imagine, Zulu culture is not the only culture we have in South Africa. We've got 9 other cultures, very rich in their own diversity, very unique, and very different from each other. And when we talk about the Cape Malays, they're not part of these 10 cultures that I'm talking about. These are the indigenous cultures of Southern Africa, and of course South Africa. Now, safari, of course, is a big attraction. We compete with many Southern African countries. Of course, if you're looking for mass animal movement, there's no place like Kenya. It's one of those wonderful destinations where animals still roam in their natural habitat. In South Africa, of course, we have preservations for animal wildlife, such as Kruger National Park, and we make sure that these are well regulated, run by the South African National Parks, which does an amazing job and has won several awards for wildlife conservation, and not only wildlife conservation, but also the fauna and flora of South Africa. And these parks are very well managed, very well regulated, and professional services are provided. They're safe. Yes, there have been accidents where people haven't abided by the rules, where people have taken baskets of fruit into the Kruger and through their car windows have been feeding the elephants, and next thing the car lands on its side. But people are forewarned, and it's simply people just not following the rules. So we have this amazing safari that we can offer you, and we'll speak just now about exactly how many of these safari resorts that we have. Kruger National Park itself is the biggest. It has it consists of 19,500 square kilometers. It's 360 kilometers long, and at some points it's as wide as 90 kilometers from east to west. And it has 1,800 kilometers of well-maintained roads with filling stations, and it has resorts within Kruger National Park. As you know, we are home to the Big Five, which is the buffalo, elephant, lion, leopard, and rhino, and many other species of animals, the giraffe, many other species. And these are very well looked after in our nature reserves as well as game reserves. Nature reserves, we have over 1,333 nature reserves. South Africa feels very strongly about protecting the environment and the fauna and flora of the country, which is very unique in some ways. The fauna and flora in Cape Town, on Table Mountain, and the Macqualand is very unique in Southern Africa, and I think in some aspects even in Africa. So we have a responsibility to look after these areas. And we have 7 trans-frontier conservation areas, all spread over South Africa in different parts, and we share these with neighboring countries. Next slide, please. The sky picture you see, or the firmament on the left, is what you see from most of inland South Africa, where there's no light pollution, clear skies at night. The winter skies are extremely beautiful, with the dominant Southern Cross, which can be seen, which shines very bright at night, especially in the Karoo area. It tends to be a little bit chilly. Some temperatures go down to about 0, up to about 10 Celsius. So it can be a bit chilly at night, but it's a very beautiful scene. The air is fresh, and there isn't any pollution in these areas. And this is why that area has been selected for 3 of the world's largest telescopes. We're currently building, which is a joint project of the international community as well as South Africa. We'll host the biggest radio telescope array, which is called the SKA. That's currently under construction now. Some of the satellite dishes or radio dishes have already been commissioned. We're also home to the SALT and the Meerkat radio telescopes, clearly because of that being the clearest and most visible place, or the sky is probably the most visible in what is called Mid-Karoo, where Sutherland is. Sutherland is actually in the northern Cape, although it's a strong throw from Cape Town. It falls into a different province, but it's a very beautiful part of South Africa. And it has a semi-desert topography, which has a beauty of its own, especially in winter at that night in particular. Thank you. South Africa is blessed with many scenic wonders. Many South Africans are shocked when they travel their own country, and we have so many diverse wonders spread throughout the length and breadth of our country, ranging from the panorama route in Mpumalanga, the Blight River Canyon, God's Window, which are not on the screen at the moment. I've spoken to you about the Table Mountain and the wine route. We have the longest wine route in the world. It's 850 kilometers long. And we are currently rated the 6th largest wine producer in the world, producing 959 million liters of wine a year. I think at the moment, or last year, in fact, not so much this year, there's been rain. I think Cape Town had more wine in its cellars than it had water. But that has come right now with the recent rains, and they're back on track again. Of course, the garden route is very scenic, especially at this time of the year, when the fynbos, as it's called, comes into blossom and bloom, and it's an amazing route to follow. The Drakensberg Range, which is the spine of the plateau in South Africa, which runs from north to south. It's one of the longest ranges in southern Africa, and it offers a variety of beautiful waterfalls, beautiful mountains, and of course, if you're into freshwater fishing, it offers you fresh trout fishing from Drakensberg. And they have two species. They have brown trout and they have the rainbow trout, which are very unique to that part of the world. Can we continue? As mentioned, this is the wine route on the top, with some beautiful mountain ranges not far from Cape Town. An hour's drive from Cape Town, you can be in that mountain range, which is very beautiful, which overlooks the Cape Winelands and the wine route. The route is called Route 62. It's not the US Route 62, it's the Cape one, but that can take you through the entire wine route of South Africa. Some of the most famous restaurants in South Africa are based in the wine farms. Some beautiful boutique hotels, and you can actually stay overnight in many of them. And they offer beautiful menus, especially Franschhoek, which is named after the French Huguenots, which settled in that part of the Western Cape when they left France and took refuge in South Africa. And the picture in the middle is one of the scenes from Table Mountain. You can go by cable car, and you can climb down if you're energetic enough, or you can come back by cable car. The picture at the bottom doesn't do much justice to the flowers, but that reddish-looking tinge on the bottom there is actually the Namaqualand daisies. These spread for kilometers and kilometers, and it's a natural phenomenon, and it comes out around about this time of the year. And actually, as the poet said, October is the most beautiful month of the year. These are actually Namaqualand daisies that pop out of the very arid-looking soil once a year, full bloom, blossom, and it just continues for as long as you can drive up Namaqualand Road. You see these beautiful flowers, different colors. This is a particular color, it's like a yellowish orange color, but you get varieties. And this is a very beautiful, this is a must-see when you're in South Africa. Continue. We have, as you can see from the text there, we have 2,000 kilometers of beautiful coastline with blue flag beaches. There is an international rating agency that oversees a local rating agency, and we have been awarded several blue flag status for our beaches. At the moment, in our coastline, we're flying 66 blue flags, on 46 different beaches, which means that the beaches are rated in terms of protection of the ecosystem, no pollution, public facilities, safety, and so on. A long list of criteria that is gone into, and that's to give you the assurance that when you are going to a blue flag beach, that you can rest assured that there's no pollution in the seawater. And the minute any of these standards are dropped, you come off the blue flag status, and they're very rigorous. Many beaches start off very well, but after the festive season, their ratings drop because they fall foul of these very stringent regulations. And linked to these beautiful beaches, we have bustling cities and also relaxed getaways. So whilst we can offer you a beach, for instance, this one is in Durban, that mountain, small mountain in the back is called the Point. That's the entry point to our Durban harbour, which is one of the largest container terminals. There's two, which are the largest in the southern hemisphere. It's Durban and Kucha. Or correctly pronounced is Kucha. That's the correct name. And of course, the water here is very much warmer than in Cape Town, so this tends to be a much more popular coastline for a number of water sports. But of course, if you are into serious surfing, then you will go down to Jeffreys Bay and even a little bit more south. There's a lot of surfing that happens in Cape Town. You have to wear a rubber suit because of the temperatures that drop to very uncomfortable levels. So there is a lot of surfing in South Africa. We also offer a lot of diving facilities on the coral reefs, and we are very cautious of the safety of our tourists when undertaking these sports, because it is something that we take pride in, making sure that we don't have any casualties. We also offer very pristine golf courses. We have over 500 in South Africa. Many of them are designed by internationally acclaimed golfers like Gary Player, Ernie Els. They've designed several of our golf courses, and there are many other designers that have designed golf courses in South Africa, and many international competitions are played in South Africa. Just recently we had the Nedbank Sun City or Sun International Golf Championship, played on a course designed by Gary Player in the middle of nowhere. It's linked to the Sun City Resort. So we have a lot of wonderful opportunities for golfers that simply want to do golf tourism in South Africa. Next slide, please. These are photographs of the beautiful scenery we have in most of our cities. There are restaurants, hotels overlooking the beautiful sea line and the seashore, and you're not short of any wonderful views. Once a year, we see the sardine run, and this picture in the middle is probably those are sardines you see there, and they beach from mid-year, around about June to July, August sometimes. It comes and goes, I think, due to marine resource scarcity. We've seen a drop in the sardine run, but most times they wash up on the beaches. There are millions, and of course there's a big rush to go with plastic crates to collect as many sardines as you can. And once they've beached, they're safe to be eaten. But it also, as you can see, they are followed by some very serious predators. And of course there's some beautiful movies that have been made of how the dolphins protect the sardines from the sharks. Of course the sharks do win in the end. But those are some of the beautiful natural phenomena that happen along the South African coastline at various times of the year. It's something worth seeing. And at the bottom you can take a dip in the cold Atlantic Ocean, or cool, I should rather call it, and there you can see the African penguins. They are not extinct as many people would think. There's lots of them running around, and that beach is called Boulders Beach because of the big boulders. It's a very beautiful beach to visit. It's quiet, most times it's very quiet, despite the fact that it's well advertised for tourism, but it's a very quiet beach. And of course you can go shark diving if you like, with a shark tank, where you go into the ocean with the sharks and you feed them, and it's very interesting and scary, but I believe a number of people from Thailand have done this. Please continue. Now, adventure sports. This is taken at the Storms River mouth. As you can see, the river comes through a very narrow gorge, and because it comes through a narrow gorge, there's a bit of pressure getting into the sea, but it's people that are into the sport love it. It's very well supported, and it's very safe because we take many precautions, and to date we've been very fortunate that it's a very popular area for not only white river rafting, but also for the bridge across there. I've been across several times. It's very tempting, but it's also very scary when you hit the middle and there's a big wall of water coming at you. It can be quite scary. But yes, it is fun and many people enjoy it. And also there's a trail, if you're into hiking, called the Otter Trail, which starts in the Storm River and goes 4 kilometers along the coastline. It's very safe, and not far from here you can do skydiving or you can do bungee jumping off the tallest bridge in the world, which I think is 216 meters. You can do bungee jumping off there if that's your passion in life. Certainly not for me. But we also have other venues. The Moses Madiba football stadium, which was built for the 2010 World Cup, offers bungee jumping off its big arch, and also it has a viewing platform, so you can access this all year round, and you can get a good view of the harbour, the ocean, and the city itself, and also at night. So these are very beautiful viewing opportunities. And of course there's the Orange River, which is still a big attraction for whitewater rafting, and abseiling off Neisner's, as I mentioned. This particular Storms River offers a very big opportunity for the brave and the big at heart. Next slide, please. Continue. I've mentioned some of this. As you can see, the surfers there, the whitewater rafters, and there are other many original ideas that emerge from the locals about skiing down the sand dune and stuff like that. So, some beaches have marine reserves where we try and keep people off because turtles breed along the coastline. There's whale breeding that continues at various times of the year. So some of these are closed at some point in time. But they are out of 2,500 kilometer coastline. There's always an opportunity for you to do something. Next slide, please. In the cities, as I mentioned to you, in Cape Town, the picture on the left is from Cape Town. It's one of the old slave areas in Cape Town. It's called Waka. As you can see, the road is not tarred, it's cobbled. This dates back to the first arrival of the Malay slaves. This is where they lived. We try to retain the colorful culture of the Malay slaves, and it's been preserved this way, and many of the houses are now declared heritage sites, so they're very meticulously maintained and preserved for future generations. So there's a bustling lifestyle. Out of the Cape Malay culture came a unique cuisine. That cuisine has really gained a lot of popularity, and you only find it in Cape Town. So you'd have to go there to enjoy some of that. The Cape Minstrels, which are the descendants of the Cape Malays, have a unique music style, and they have very unique costumes. And after the Rio Carnival, the Cape Malay Carnival, or the Kaapse Klopse, as they call it in the vernacular, that festival is the second biggest in the world after Rio. And it has a total of 13,000 minstrels from 70 troops that participate on an annual basis. So every year on the 2nd of January, or round about the 2nd of January, they have what they call the Second New Year, which is commemorating the freeing of the slaves, which happened many hundreds of years ago in South Africa. Next slide, please. South Africans are, as a young nation, we are unique in our own way. We've had our own unique history, which informs us of the values we like as a young nation. Yes, and it's not easy starting a democracy. Some of your countries have had a democracy for 600 or 700 years. Your parliaments have functioned for hundreds of years. South Africans only started off and we're 25 years into democracy. Yes, there will be mistakes made, and yes, there will be lessons learned, but the main thing is we're on track. We're a nation with values. We treasure non-racialism, non-sexism, as many of the values that we espouse to. And yes, we will make sure that we never go back to the past. And our Constitution is clear on that. So even those that yearn for the past can never bring it back. And we have had many recognitions, international recognition given to our leaders like Mandela, Albert Lutuli, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu. These are all Nobel laureates and have been recognized for what they've done for our country. And of course, the last but not least is that South Africa, as we often tease the Indians, we say, you gave us Gandhi and we gave you the Mahatma back. So you can walk in the footsteps of Mahatma Gandhi if you visit the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial in KwaZulu-Natal. So yes, we are open to learning, we're open to criticism, and we do get criticized when we put our foot wrong, and we take that criticism very seriously because we want to do the best we can. We're only 25 years into democracy, and there's a lot for us to learn from established democracies and in the international community, and we will learn from the best practices, and we leave that doesn't suit us. So no offense meant, but you've helped us extensively to become the nation that we are, but we are here to offer you our country as a tourist destination. Next slide. We're proud of that history that we come from. There are many that would find political or discomfort in what I'm saying. I'm one of those that's proud of the history that we have. And I visited the Apartheid Museum several times. And this museum actually depicts the history of South Africa. What happened in our country is very well captured in the Apartheid Museum. I must warn you that you need a fair amount of time. It's not a museum you can do in an hour or two. There are visuals and there are documentaries that speak about the road that we've traveled, and that in itself is a it's an eye-opener, and it's very educational, and it's a good experience. We also host the Cradle of Mankind. We know that there are many countries in Africa that claim they have the cradle of humankind, but I think the facts in South Africa speak for themselves, and the DNA testing and all the scientific assessments of the finds do confirm that South Africa is home to the cradle of humankind. Robben Island is a very good visit for those of you that go to Cape Town. It is the place where Mandela was detained for a number of years, probably 20 years, and 7 years after that he spent in another prison on the mainland. But his prison cell, when you visit it, you will see that there is no ways Mandela could have slept in a straightened position on the floor. The cell was too short, and he was probably always under pressure when he went to bed. He slept on the floor, and he had no bed. And Robben Island can be extremely cold because it's subjected to the southeaster, which is a very cold breeze or wind that blows toward Cape Town. And Robben Island is straight in the line of that. I've spoken to you about the Mandela capture site, and then Vilakazi Street, where both Archbishop Desmond Tutu and Mandela were neighbors when they lived in Johannesburg in the late 50s, early 60s. Those are national monuments today and can be visited, and it's very safe to go into Soweto. I've spoken to you about the Bo-Kaap Malay houses, and of course the Durban Indian culture. Can we move on? Of course at the bottom, sorry, can you just go back one? The bottom is rock art, which is also a reflection of another part of our history. Sometimes we forget to mention them. These are the indigenous people of South Africa. They're called the Khoi and the San. These were given derogatory names of Busman or Bushman and Hottentot. Those are certainly not their names. Their names are Khoi and San. These are the indigenous people of South Africa. When the first Dutch settlers came, these are the people that were domiciled in Cape Town, what is today Cape Town. And of course they went far north, Some of the best paintings are in the Drakensberg, and that's thousands of kilometers away from Cape Town, but this is how far they went. And this rock art tells a story of their lifestyle. They were big into what we call today cattle farming, but as you can see, they had herds, and they roamed around freely inside what is South Africa today. And that's part of our treasured history. These, of course, are very carefully monitored and guarded against any defacing or damage being done to them. So many of these have been declared heritage sites. Next slide, please. This is just a picture depicting just how integrated South Africa has become. We would like to see more of this happening, but it is a gradual process. But we have some very good, what we call township tourism, where you can go and into the townships and experience what life is like in a township, as opposed to a high net worth suburb. And it's a very vibrant life with a very dynamic lifestyle. Lots of music, lots of culture, lots of fun. Very lively people, it's a good experience. Next slide, please. As I mentioned to you earlier, we are not a mass volume country, a tourist volume country. We tend to err on the side of caution. We do, of course, always encourage more and more tourists. But as you can see, in 2016, we got 7 million tourists. And the numbers are still being audited for 2017. We're very cautious about what we put out, because it has to be audited and it must be able to be substantiated. It's easy to claim numbers and never have oversight. There's strict oversight over these numbers. But we are cautious about this, and one of the things that you will see is, where do our tourists mainly come from? If you look at North America, on the top left-hand side, you will see that we get over 267,000 arrivals from North America, which is a big market to us. Central America has dropped slightly due to economic reasons and developments in these countries. Indian Ocean islands, small numbers. Europe, very big. Europe is still one of our biggest tourist sending countries, and we have very good trade relations. As some of you might have heard on the news, President Ramaphosa was there addressing the EU and the EU Parliament, and also we went to the G20 meeting as well. Asia, very much to everybody's surprise, that's not the big market for us. As you can see, where we are targeting high net worth markets, which we are very cautious about. And then, of course, the Middle East, to a large extent, brings in quite a lot of tourists for us. And the big numbers come from Africa, the continent of Africa, for various reasons. Some of them are even educational reasons, but as you can see, Australasia also a big contributor to South Africa. So those of you that have been to South Africa, your numbers are reflected, I can assure you. They've been audited, and thank you very much, and please come again. Visas, for many countries, we have a visa waiver, and we often get criticized about this, but it's a process that we've got to be very careful about. Many countries don't have a national population register, so we can't sign visa waiver agreements with them until they get their house in order. And there are requirements which are of an international standard. Thailand has a visa waiver with South Africa, and it's 30 days either way. But many of your countries, European countries, countries in North America do have visa waivers for your passports, so not everybody requires a visa. There was a bit of a glitch in our visa system where we overly diligent and imposed a very restrictive visa regime because we want to combat child trafficking. And we went a little bit overboard, and it affected our tourism numbers, but we've since found a different way of addressing the same issue differently and not so restrictive on tourists that want to come to South Africa. But we have to be aware and we have to be cautious, and I think to South Africa's defense, we erred on the side of caution, and it cost us a lot of tourism. But it wasn't something done in bad faith. because we know the damage and the neglect that many of these people are subjected to in foreign countries when they are trafficked, and just how much it costs them. So we are very cautious about this, and yes, we got criticized for it, but that was the reason that we wanted to err on the side of caution. Health risks. We're not a malaria-rated country, but yes, it's always useful to take precautions, and any travel clinic right in our airports will be able to advise you. We are malaria-free, but there are areas you might go into after you've been to South Africa. We suggest that you familiarize yourself with those countries, but generally South Africa is malaria-free. Getting around in South Africa, it's the normal flights, charters, car hire, and many international car hire companies have established themselves in South Africa, like, as you know, Avis is international, and therefore, if you're Avis, wherever you are, you can do the same thing. Trains, yes, and city and bus tours, very popular. This is a market that's really grown extensively, and there are more tour buses on the road than ever before. But these are not just city tours, those are separate, but these are long distance bus tours with very interesting and affordable packages given the exchange rate. Of course, we're also a value for money destination for the shoppers. Most international brands are available in South Africa, and all major credit cards are accepted. And our VAT, I think, is 15% now. Am I correct, Andre? That's gone up 1%. And there's some idea of what domestic flights cost, but of course these change from time to time, so it's a little bit difficult. As you can see, there were some different numbers quoted there. But basically, we offer all the services that you get anywhere else once visited. When to go? These are the temperatures here. Winter temperatures on the right, and as you can see, Cape Town, we don't have as much humidity as Asia, but certainly Cape Town this time of the year, in fact towards the end of December, beginning of January, can be very warm, but if that's what you like, then that's the place to go to. But otherwise you could cool down in winter, Johannesburg, Durban, and Kruger National Park. That tends to be a little bit more humid because it's far more north and nearer the tropical climate of Mozambique. So that could be fairly humid, and those temperatures are given in Celsius. So we invite you to come and visit us, and wherever we can assist you at the embassy. We also have a range of travel agents in Thailand that we're working very closely with to get a better understanding of tourism in South Africa. And I must say that the tourism numbers are growing, not as fast as we would like. We would like to see more, but of course if you enter on a UK passport, it goes as a UK tourist, which helps us also capture those numbers. But from Thailand, we are seeing a slight improvement. I think we went from 6,000 to 7,000 only, but 100,000 South Africans will be coming to Thailand by the end of the year. But that's also good. It's good for South Africans to come and see and get exposed to what's available and how other people live. It's a very good experience, and Thailand is a very good value for money. South Africa at the moment, also very good value for money, given our exchange rate. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patience and for giving us your kind attention, and we will take questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Is there any questions from the floor? We'll send the mic round. Just raise your hand.
Over at the back, please, here, sir. Sir, over the back here. Could I just remind everybody, and I want to reiterate Chairman's request, only one question at a time, please.
One of the first cult films I ever saw in the United States was a South African film called The Gods Must Be Crazy. If you haven't seen it, I'm sure it's downloadable. It's not only very funny, but it's thought-provoking, and I'd like to know what South Africans think about that film.
It's one of the greatest movies because it depicts, as I said, the indigenous people of South Africa. Because many of us South Africans don't even know that the actually indigenous people of South Africa are the Khoi and the San. Not many of us that you see on a daily basis. If you go to South Africa, unless you go into the areas where you see the Khoi and the San, where their natural habitat is, of course they are westernizing gradually because of education systems, development of their language, because their language is going to be preserved and taught in their schools, and we will do whatever we can to preserve that culture. But it is something that we can't help because they do move into the cities. But as you see them in the movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, with a Coke bottle falling out of the aeroplane, that's exactly how they are up until today. But that's very true. That's what used to be referred to as Bushman or Hottentot, which is really the Khoi and the San. They speak a very strange language. It's very difficult to understand. Lots of clicks.
You mentioned a couple of times about the garden route, which I too understand is spectacular. If I were to take the garden route from Port Elizabeth to Cape Town, what would I expect to see?
The best route to enter into the garden route would be Port Elizabeth. You can either fly from Johannesburg to Port Elizabeth, or if you land in Durban, you can actually fly to Port Elizabeth. The minute you leave Port Elizabeth, the garden route starts. First thing you'll notice is a change in the scenery, a change in the topography, because literally you're going into a totally different, I don't know what the or the technical name would be, but the actual vegetation changes drastically as you move towards the lower Eastern Cape, as it's called, the lower Cape or Southern Cape, as it's called. So, I would suggest that if you're doing the trip, you should consider staying over in some of the more spectacular areas. I would certainly suggest that you stop over in the Wilderness, which is not a town or a city. It's not a city. It's small. The Wilderness is a town that is very spectacular, has an amazing beach, but in all the tourism brochures you pick up, you very seldom see Wilderness, and the name is Wilderness. And as you can understand from the name, it means exactly that. The beach gives you the sense that it's a wild beach. It's a fantastic beach. And that is very spectacular. And what's around Wilderness in terms of scenery, also very beautiful. George is a city and has taken on almost a Western dimension, but of course Wilderness is transport. Knysna you can see, which is also very beautiful. In fact, the road takes you on the water's edge of the Knysna Lake, and you can actually see the historic shipping routes in and out of Knysna, because that was the port where the timber used to be exported from South Africa to Europe in the early days for shipbuilding. And unfortunately, that's one of the forests that was destroyed by fire just recently, but it is recovering. So there are a lot of cities along the garden route that you could possibly consider, but I would say that the best would be plan a trip, stop over at Wilderness, Knysna, or George, depending on your preference, and any assistance you need, we could also assist you from the embassy with the information. But until you get to Cape Town, which is your final destination. But of course, I would also suggest that if you're in Mossel Bay, you should turn inland to a little town called Oudtshoorn, which is a Dutch name. Oudtshoorn is where the ostrich farms are. But most importantly, the biggest caves in the southern hemisphere are in the Kango caves, and we will certainly send you some information about that. Very colorful, very picturesque, and you go through on a guided tour. There are no private tours allowed. You go on a guided tour, and it's an amazing experience. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and especially when the caves are lit up, it's very, very spectacular. So yes, there's quite a lot to do. You could spend almost half your holiday just going from Port Elizabeth to Cape Town and then finishing off in Cape Town and then leaving. So a lot of people that we've advised to actually focus their holiday on that have done that, and there have been very good results from that. So yes, it's a wonderful destination. You can even go on camel rides in Oudtshoorn. There's a lot to do. Ostrich rides, some of the best ostrich meat restaurants are in the area. And also there's a whole industry around the ostrich in that particular area, which is a legacy from the French when they were there.
Have a question.
On your left, please, sir. Sure.
Very difficult to get up, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you very much for your talk, Mr. Ambassador. It was very interesting, and it's a very beautiful country. Just testing my memory here, in 1970, I worked in Southwest Africa, which infers it's part of Africa. I see now that's called Namibia. Was it ever a part of Africa? I'm just saying you're looking through the internet for it. Just a quick question.
Yes, it was.
It was a part,
In
yeah.
fact, the name Southwest Africa, when the Germans left after the Second World War, it was given back to South Africa to manage as a protectorate, which they did until they were ready for independence, and then South Africa moved out of Southwest Africa. And it then took on an indigenous name, which is Namibia, which is the name of the desert, the Namib Desert. So that's why it's called Namibia. But yes, it was called, at one stage it was even called German West Africa. But the German fell away and became Southwest Africa, administered by South Africa, and had a lot of South African presence in that part of the world. And after independence, we withdrew from what is now called Namibia. Namibia, incidentally, offers a lot of desert tourism, and it's amazing. If you're a photographer, there's no better place to bring your photography than the Namib Desert. Extremely beautiful. And some of the Okavango swamps, which fall into Namibia, just amazing tourism in the Okavango swamps. Amazing to see. Very wonderful. Also a country worth visiting.
Ambassador, over here.
Oh, thank you.
A quick brief question. I seem to remember reading that, I believe it was in Botswana, you can ride African elephants. Is that still the case, or is that a mystery?
There are some attempts, even in South Africa.
Yeah.
How safe it is, I don't know, because the African elephant is a little bit of a cowboy elephant, if I put it that way. When you think you've got them well trained, they do the weirdest of things. But yes, it is.
The article was riding these African elephants through on a safari,
Yes.
on the back of an African elephant, which must be quite remarkable.
It is for the not so faint-hearted people, because it is high off the ground firstly, and of course the African elephant is very temperamental. But I know in South Africa they're also attempting it, but I would be very cautious.
Thank you for your speech, Mr. Ambassador. On your map, I noticed there was one little white spot in there called Lesotho.
Yes.
Why was that never part of South Africa?
Can we go back to that, please? To the second map, I think it was. Lesotho, in fact, it used to be called Basotho land, which is named after the Basotho people. And Swaziland is named after the Swazi people. These were two, or are two kingdoms that were under British rule. Yes, they don't show Swaziland because it's a bit small. That's very strange. The map is, no, there it is. You see where that sort of D is there, just under the word Mozambique. That's Swaziland over there. It's part of Mozambique. So these two kingdoms preferred not to be part of South Africa. They, when that particular demarcation of the maps, the drawing of the maps happened, and separation of different states, they opted not to be part of what was then apartheid South Africa, which one could understand then. So they remained outside of South Africa. They have their own governments, they're sovereign states, and there's a Basotho king. Let's see, the third, I think, is the Basotho king. And then we have the Swazi king, and they are totally independent of South Africa. So they are states within foreign, or sovereign states within South Africa, and there's two of them. We've never really broached the issue with them whether they would like to be part of South Africa. Mysteriously, some South Africans are referring to Lesotho as the 10th province, because it literally depends on South Africa almost 100%. They use our currency, we have a lot of investments there, Some of the biggest water reserves providing water to South Africa are based in Lesotho. We're now in the 4th phase of the Katsi Dam, which is a huge water resource which literally provides water for every province north of Lesotho. That's how much water has been captured there. But it's South African investment. And then in Swaziland, they continue as a monarchy and they continue as sovereign states. So whether they will one day come into South Africa, I don't know. But we don't have a constitution that recognizes monarchies, so maybe that would be a bit of a deterrent, because I think the kings like their monarchy to remain, and one can't blame them for that. But they're part of our customs union. South Africa supports these two countries extensively in terms of the incomes of these countries are solely dependent on South Africa, and if we had to pull the plug on them, they probably wouldn't survive economically. But we have no reason to do that. Languages of Lesotho are spoken in the north of our country and in the south of our country. And the Swazi language is also spoken in the south and the north of the country. So these communities, although they're sovereign states, the Swazi people and Basotho people are well integrated into the rest of South Africa.
Ambassador.
It's not actually a question, it's a comment. You mentioned the Drakensberg Mountains, and I know for a fact that in order to preserve as much of the natural scenery as possible, with the pumped storage system at Drakensberg, they actually built the power station inside the mountain, which was some engineering feat.
That's correct, sir. In fact, on the eastern side of the Drakensberg, there is a water system where the water flows under the Drakensberg to create a hydro system which is in the mountain. And exactly for that same reason, is not to interfere with the topography and the beauty of, and of course the fauna and flora, which in many instances would be irreplaceable if we did destroy it. It's the same with the Wild Coast Road. As I said, there's a new freeway coming out from Durban to East London. The biggest challenge has been, how do we build an expressway but preserve the ecosystem at the same time? There's a very rare species of eagle that breeds in the Mtentweni Gorge, and once we destroy that or fiddle with that, that species of eagle would be extinct to Southern Africa. So every precaution is taken. There's one area that was in big dispute, and it's amazing to believe how strong the environmental lobby group is, which I think is a very good thing, and I think we're blessed to have people that take an interest, and it cost them a lot of money, but they had the road stopped because of a particular species of butterfly. Everybody was up in arms. What the butterflies will do with it? Well, they've got everything to do with it, if you think of the ecosystem. So yes, there is a very strong lobby group that we appreciate as government, because it's important that we listen to that voice as well. And they've been very effective. They've stopped many projects. Another project that was stopped was the building of the Pan-African Parliament, because South Africa hosts the only Pan-African Parliament. It's a parliament of all the countries of Africa, 55 countries. That building has been stopped because of the species of fauna or flora that was found on that piece of land, and the building cannot proceed. It costs millions to delay a building like that, and the financial implications, but the government said we will honor that particular commitment, not to tamper or to interfere with that ecosystem. So we have a government that listens, thank goodness for that, because that's important in terms of what legacy do we leave after we have left our footprint. So yes, it is a very important question, sir.
Sir, we have one last question.
Good afternoon. Good morning still. Jeff, nice to meet you and Carol at Archie's party, and of course be on your table at the ball, South African ball. I've never been to South Africa. I wanted to know a little bit about the Blue Train, and also you might be able to recommend a tourist or a travel agent, probably difficult in Thailand to get one, that would put me on a tour that would do the garden route and the Blue Train, etc., and travel around. Yeah.
Thank you. You know, it is difficult when you try and sell South Africa in a short space of time like this, because there is so much one can talk about. Yes, the Blue Train is still operational, and we rated one of the best 5-star hotels on wheels and offers exceptional service. And we'd be glad to get your details after this. My team is here, we'd like to get your details, and we'll assist you in that process. We've been able to identify some very credible Thai travel agents that we are in close contact with, and we work with them on a regular basis. Kun Art is in touch with them. We have several events throughout the year where we share ideas and experience with them, and we've had very good feedback from clients. So it would be a pleasure for us to assist you with that. And also we have some other recommendations we'd like to make to you, but certainly we'll assist you with that. And the Blue Train is a very good experience, but you might want to do the Blue Train, link it to something else, and we might come up with some suggestions for you.
Please thank His Excellency, the South African Ambassador, for giving up his valuable time, especially on a Sunday morning. He came all the way this morning, straight here, not even staying overnight last night. So, Jeff, thank you very much once again. It's always a pleasure. And I have a certificate of appreciation, but I also have a small apology to make. My typist forgot to put the word South Africa on it. We can get you. Okay, sorry about that.
This will be my second one, so let me have one that's slightly different. And let's see who can spot the mistake.
It's a one-off.